Hello, hello.
Welcome back. Selamat datang. Welcome back to V20 Summit 2022 Values at the Center. So how was your break time, everyone? Good?
Good. Ate good
Did you
food.
enjoy the majestic jungle? Nice.
Nice workshops. Okay, since I can tell that everyone enjoyed their quite big lunch, so for us not to get sleepy, I just saw someone yawn. The perfect timing when I see someone sleepy. A guy over there's like, okay, we don't want that to happen. We don't want you to fall asleep during our next session. So let's play a little game.
Yes.
How about it?
Yes.
Right? Are we up for a little game, everyone?
Nice.
Yes. Okay. So we have this cultural performance dance.
It's one of the most iconic and one of the most energetic cultural performance in Bali
Okay.
that we all know.
Do you know what it is? Really? You haven't seen it in TripAdvisor? What to do in Bali? You must watch this dance. Have you ever heard this dance? Kecak dance?
The kecak dance.
Right? Everybody must see kecak dance while you're in Bali. Okay? Now, the note is not from TripAdvisor, it's from Melissa. Yeah. Okay, so what we do is, we're going to stand up. Everybody on your feet. Let's go. Okay.
Nice.
Everybody on your feet and find a partner. Be it someone who is a stranger to you. That's more fun. Okay? Find a stranger. Not your friend, please. Different language. Yes, okay. And then you can see the example from me and Kinan. Yeah? We're not professional kecak dancer, but we're trying our best. Okay, so
You ready?
this is what we're going to do. So the dancers, when they perform kecak dance, they put their hands up
Yeah.
like this, right? Okay? And then they also make noises. That's why it's kecak, because they make the sound.
The
Cha.
chanting.
The chanting.
Cha, cha,
Cha,
cha,
cha,
cha,
cha.
cha,
Okay?
cha, cha,
But
cha. Yeah.
there's a trick to it. So we don't say the cha at the same time from the partners, okay? So when Kinan say
Cha,
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 cha.
cha, 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 cha.
And things
Okay?
goes faster and faster and
Okay?
faster.
And then you pick up the tempo of the
Yeah.
cha from slow to fast, from soft to loud. Can we do that? Can we try to do that?
All right? You ready?
Let's do that.
Let's do
I
that.
hope I'm ready.
Cha, 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 Nice, guys.
How's everyone doing? Can everybody do that? Good? Good? Successful?
Oh,
Nearly professional kecak dancer?
Some of them actually, they want to do it again. Like,
You want to do it one more time?
One more time.
That was rehearsal, darlings.
rehearsal.
Okay, one more time.
On my
Ready?
count, 3, 2, 1. Cha 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 cha. All right. Thank you.
Thank God I'm not a kecak dancer. That was hard.
That was intense, yeah.
Yeah. So after the summit, please make a stop. Find the nearest and the most happening kecak dance. Where is it?
Uluwatu.
Uluwatu, yeah? In Uluwatu, right? Okay. All right. Thank you for playing with us.
Thank you so much. And hope you enjoyed the summit so far. Also, the all-day activities and workshop during the break.
Okay.
So, our next session, which is the third session, will be divided into session 3.1 about nature, inspiring talk,
and session 3.2 about Nature Task Force panel discussion. Talking about the nature nowadays, excessive use in natural resources has become a lifestyle in most of the global population. So this might harm the sustainability of our environment sooner or later.
The society has to embrace the value of circular regeneration so that we can progressively save our beloved planet. And I think this is the perfect venue to talk about this within the perfect life philosophy of the Balinese, the Trihita Karana.
That's great. And ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to discuss about values and nature more on the third session of Nature Task Force Inspiring Talk.
So I'm inviting our inspiring speakers to come on stage. Melati Waisen, founder of Utopia and Bye Bye Plastic Bag Indonesia. Yes, please give a round of applause.
And
Ibu Tri Mumpuni, member of National Research and Innovation Agency Steering Committee Indonesia.
And the facilitator for our 3.1 Nature Inspiring Talk session, who is joining us online, will be Dr. Christoph Dembeck, or Pak Chris, as the V20 co-founder and also professor and researcher at Swinburne University of Technology, Impact Strategies, Australia.
He is an experienced researcher, manager, consultant, and teacher with expertise and experience in using business strategy and business model for social impact and complex problem solving, and is driven by the need to ensure wicked problems are solved in a way they do not create new or aggravate exciting issue.
Please welcome our 3.0 session speakers, panelists, and facilitator of Nature Task Force Inspiring Talk.
Please give a round of applause.
Together with my sister Isabel, I started a movement in Bali because I saw a problem that I thought had an easy solution. We wanted to do something about the growing problem of plastic pollution on our home island of Bali, Indonesia. Today, I introduce myself as a full-time change maker and movement builder.
Indonesia bisa hebat dan kuat kalau desa itu betul-betul dibangun dengan cara yang benar. Kalau bisa itu 1000 desa di Indonesia seperti itu ya, hanya satu. Kita masih kekurangan manusia yang berkualitas, yang mau tinggal di desa dan membangun desa itu dengan cara yang benar.
Hi!
Selamat datang.
Terima kasih, selamat datang. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ibu-ibu, bapak-bapak, teman-teman, it's a great pleasure to join you online. Love to dance the Kecak dance with our inspirational speakers today. But unfortunately, I cannot do that. But I feel very special to be here with you online. And we've heard from so many great people already, and we have 2 more very special people with us today. So welcome Ibu Melati, welcome Ibu Tri. We've heard quite a lot about you, but if we could start by hearing from you again what you've done, and you've done quite a lot. So, Ibu Melati, can I start with you?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. I'm very honored to be here today. It's really, a breath of fresh air for me to be back here at Green School. I'm an alumni of the school and a pioneer student all the way back from opening day. I had
Thank you. I had a slideshow, and I think for the first session, to talk a little bit about my values. I thought it would be a fun idea to ask everybody to join me. I don't know if the slides are going to be coming up. There we go. I'm going to stand for this part because for those of you that have seen me on different stages know that when I get on stage, I have way too much energy in my body to sit still. So as introduction, hi everyone, my name is Melati. I'm a 21-year-old full-time changemaker, and I'll tell you a little bit about my journey and what my values are that made me become the person I am. But first, it says breathe. So I'm going to ask everybody in the room on the count of 3 to take a deep breath in, okay? 1, 2, 3, take a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. Okay, why did this lady ask me to breathe? Well, for 2 reasons. The first is because as a speaker, the butterflies in my tummy, it's a nice way to calm it down and get me grounded for the session. And the second reason is because every second breath comes from the ocean. So I thought it'd be a strong reminder to show how important our oceans are. But you can ask yourself the question, the same question I asked myself when I was 12 years old. If our oceans are so important, why do we treat them badly? Now, I grew up on the island of Bali. I'm Indonesian, and this is the paradise home that everybody thinks about when you say, I live in Bali. But this is the reality. And at the age of 10 and 12 years old, together with my sister, I had to ask one very simple question. Which Bali do we want? The beautiful paradise or the island of trash? So, here we are, the very first day of our mission, nearly 10 years ago. We said we were not going to wait until we were older to start making change. So we started our first organization, Bye Bye Plastic Bags. And I'm kind of breezing through this because I also want to hear from the discussion that we have, but to tell you about the values that I had centering education in everything we do as a youth-led organization, community building and community efforts. So Bali's biggest cleanup, mobilizing over 12,000 people on the island every single year. We host this cleanup as a symbolic day of action. Also leading up to the actual policy change, thanks to the effort of so many like-minded organizations, so many different organizations on the island, which finally implemented the ban on single-use plastic bags, straws, and styrofoam. So for those of you tuning in, for those of you that are here visiting for the V20 or the G20, remember that the plastic bags are banned. So if you see someone using it, or if you see a shop still giving it out, take that knowledge and transform it. 10 years on the front lines, from 12 to 21 years old, what are the values that I have or that I have learned along the 10 years? The first one is grit and commitment, walking your talk. And as Gen Z, I can say that this is a lesson that we had to learn by doing. How do we walk our talk? How do we stay committed on the long term? And I think that that was something that I today value very much in the work that I have, but in the team that I build. Resilience is another one. I was raised by parents who encouraged me and my sister, instead of being punished by making mistakes or instead of being grounded, open a conversation and say, how can you learn from these mistakes? What were the lessons that you got out of these challenges? And last but not least, creativity is something that I think Gen Z values tremendously. Thinking outside the box, because we know we're not going to solve the problems with the same thinking that created it. So how do we be different? How do we think outside the box? Those are some of the lessons that I have now created on Youthtopia, the new project that I have created to help as many young people get access to the learning materials they need to create change. Hosting over 100 changemaker programs for free, because I believe in a world where every single young person can create change and accelerate the much needed change we wish to see. So for now, that's it from me, because I cannot wait to hear more about Ibu Tri, but also join in a discussion in a moment. So with that, terima kasih, and I'll pass it over.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so thrilled to have a chance to meet you here. But I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tri Mumpuni, just call me Puni. If Malati say that she is the young changemaker, I'm the senior changemaker. I'm not old, but I'm the senior. Also, another question is, who are you? I'm always giving an answer. I'm not a housewife. I'm a house manager. I manage everything at home, including my husband. The reason is because being in Bali, I have to leave him alone in Jakarta, But this is what her beauty is, being a woman. If you have a purpose in your life, thanks to the men that really understand and support the women who choose their life to have a purpose. Not just being a mom, but also serving for the underprivileged community. I would like to share you in the early 90s when I came to a place, a very small, tiny place in eastern part of Indonesia, which is like 1.5 hours drive, and then flying, and then you have to drive another 2 hours. In a very small, tiny village. In the first place, we give them clean water supply and sanitation. The reason is because I saw that due to the culture background, all those tribes live in a very, hilly area because they can oversee all their enemy back to the very old time. But the source of the clean water is actually down deep below the valley. And only women who are fetching the water. So I'm asking one of the village headmen, hey, what happened if your wife is no longer strong, do not have a chance, do not have the capability to take the water, going down for half an hour and then going up for 1 hour. What happened to you if you, oh, don't worry, ma'am, we can find another wife. Excuse me. I said, my goodness, I'm an engineer and I'm a woman. I cannot stand to see all those things. So the best thing is I told to all young engineers in my team, please make your life useful for other people, no matter what, And don't worry about, oh, how I'm gonna do it. No, just you have a very strong determination that you want to help them to have clean water supply and sanitation. Okay, so what happened is, unfortunately I cannot have the film, but you can see it on the YouTube, Sumba Timur, it's Sumba. So many things that we've done for the last, like 30 years ago. Then, finally, we got the chance to bring the water, clean water, using solar pumping system, 11 kilowatt peak. Maybe the solar is a simple technology, But what happened when we have that water system, we just realized that the woman actually spent 7 hours a day just fetching the water. When we are successful bringing the water close to their surrounding with the neighborhood, so they can just need less than 5 minutes to get to the water, I was also really shocking that the 7 hours when they have it, what they do is start planting the trees that they think can improve the life standard of the family. So they told us, I really learned from them, ma'am, thank you, because 7 hours a day is very important for us to get something that I can improve the life of the family. It means that I can do something else, creating something to get the income, and this is the way I contribute something. Well, I do believe if we give the money to the woman, 100% they will bring the money to the family back home. If I give to that gentleman, I don't know, maybe there's a coffee shop, you want to drink coffee or something. Well, this is the reality, but I'm glad with that. Other issue I would like to share you is when I was in the very remote area of Kalimantan, because my work is dealing with providing clean water supply and clean energy. So it was really touched me When I came to Kalimantan, it's really in eastern part of Kalimantan. It took us flying from Jakarta, like 2 hours, and then another small aircraft, then 9 hours using the small boat, and finally we reached to that area. What has really touched me when I'm asking the question to the gentleman as the house, the head of the household, why you want to have electricity? Because we are not going to give electricity if they don't want to participate in the planning, in the development process. We have to make sure that what we give is sustainable. Sustainability can be assured if the local community participating in the development process. This is not the government project that is like helicopter, dropping something from the top. This is something that we have to make sure there is a passion in the community level, so they will taking care of the facilities. But the thing is, when I ask why you want to have electricity, it's so funny. Whenever we have a dinner in the night time, we just have very small tiny lamp. I cannot see anything except my food. But when we have the light, I can see. I can show my happiness, my face that I'm so happy to my wife. It means that I want to make them happy by seeing me happy because of very good food that she served to me. Oh, that's so sweet, she just want to have electricity, make sure that the wife can see his face is so happy, eating the food that the wife prepared for them. If I have to tell you the whole story for the last 30 years, maybe you have to stay here for a week maybe, yeah? And I don't want to do that, but the very important, the value I want to bring to all of you, just do good things in our life, and all good things will follow our life. That's what I believe strongly. And the way to pay back to God, we call it Alhamdulillah, the way we pay back is, because of the privileges that God gives to us, is by giving to others. This is the bottom line of the way you pay back what the privileges God gives to you. And before I close my conversation or my share with you, is that I would like to state it one thing that our prophet saying that Khairun nas anfa'uhum linas. What does that mean? The best human being if you can make your life useful for other people. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. So many learnings already from these introductory speeches. So I've got actually 3 that I would like to highlight. First of all, I think we have to remember that, man can be the head of the family, head of country or whatever, but it is actually a woman that is the neck that turns the head. And we should all remember that. Next one is, doesn't matter your age. Change can be done at any stage when you are, whether you're young, you're older, whether you are very senior, you can still be a change maker and make a difference that we need. And another very important learning, I think, that we see from both of you already is that, yes, we need to regenerate our ecosystems if we want to have our planet. We've destroyed so much. But we have to always think that the ecosystems go together with social systems. So it is no point in thinking about just the environment or just the society, because the two go really together. And that's where I would like to start our conversation and delve deeper in bringing the values also into our conversation. So Melati, you have already highlighted some of the values that you use. So you both have done incredible things and you have achieved so much already. And it started with you, right? So if you can tell us a bit more about the story, how, you know, how it started with you. You've done so much, much more than an average person cares about. And so caring is one thing, but then acting of that caring is another. How did it start with you?
I always have to think back to what it was like when I was 12 years old, having my 10-year-old sister and starting. You know, and I think looking back, some of the tangible examples that I can share of, you know, why me and my sister is that, well, first of all, you know, we're from a family where our mom is from the Netherlands and our dad is from Indonesia. So these two completely polar opposite cultures coming together under one roof. The power and the world that they created for me and my sister allowed us to be open-minded at a very young age about the differences in cultures, the different possibilities, but also my parents every day ended with a dinner table conversation. It was like a mandatory rule, and I know that it's not as common nowadays as well. Not every family has this opportunity, but my mom and dad would always at dinner show so much deep interest in my sister and I and take us seriously. They would never speak down to us. They would always encourage every concept, every idea. And, you know, look straight at us and say, okay, how are you going to turn that idea into action? What's your first step going to be? And taking us so seriously allowed my sister and I to take ourselves seriously and from an idea implement an action plan that grew into what it is today. And it's not just my sister and I. It starts with an idea. It can start with one person, but it grows into a movement. And that's the shout out to the team of Bye Bye Plastic Bags here in the audience. Wave your hands. There they are. You know, Bye Bye Plastic Bags quickly grew into one of the largest youth-led movements in the country, but also young people in all corners of the world saw what we were doing and said, hey, because I can see my peers taking action, I can do so as well. So Bye Bye Plastic Bags is now in 60 locations all around the world in over 30 countries, led by kids in middle school, high school, and university. So that's one of my proudest achievements, that we've become a living example that kids can do things.
Thank you. I would like to take a very strong attention to women. I first started learning how to do good things for other people when I was at grade 4, when I was 10 years old. I really copy what my mom did. My mom is a social worker. As a social worker, what she did is just traveling from one slum area to another slum area and helping all the kids in the 70s in Indonesia. So you know how old I am, you know. In the 70s, all the kids having a bone disease, you know, the skin is a very, you know, having all the problems. Then what we do is giving of penicillins to help them. It's really struck in my mind, you know, how small things, by only cleaning the skin of the poor kids and giving those penicillins is really helping them, you know. But now what I learned nowadays, that is all the problem we're facing with the SDGs. If you heard that, no access of clean water, no access of clean energy, no shelter, everything. It is because our way of life, human being way of life nowadays is not acceptable. I have to say that very clearly. Why it's not acceptable? We have to remember what Einstein always said. We cannot solve the same problem with the same way or the same thinking when we created the problem. So we have to retransform ourselves, you know. This is how then I start thinking that how we have to make an action. In Indonesia, I understand, it's not an easy, even you are going to do something good. When you are bringing the clean energy at that time, not nowadays, it's different. Not many people happy because mostly in the sub-district, usually, well, our utility bring fossil fuel. We call it high-speed diesel. You can imagine, we don't know how many liters actually being used, and how many liters are reported, to the company. You cannot handle that because it's a very, very remote area of Indonesia, and it's took you, days and days, weeks and weeks. I remember we have to ride a horse, for one day to reach to the places that we want to give clean energy. But I always say that we have to have a strong commitment, we have to have an endurance and strong determination. Then what you are thinking, what is in your mind can be realized. And I always say that I'm a woman. I can wait as long as I get what I want. This is when usually I ask permission to enter to the very remote area and we need to have a permit. Well, finally, last but not least, we have to spread the news to many people because good news has to be spread and people will be inspired. If only one person can move a group of community, to have their own clean water and clean energy, you can imagine. If all of you in this room, I can imagine how many people you can bring to help those people in the area that not as lucky as we are. They still live in the darkness, they still live without clean water supply, and they still live without any signal. Well, this is how I think we can share the value that by giving to those people in the underprivileged is how we have to pay back what God gave us. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for these great answers. I see a striking similarity in both, actually. And what I see is that you both started as kids. And what made you act is actually what you have got from home and from your parents. So that shows, again, I think how important it is how we treat our children and how important it is to instill the right values in them from the very, very early stage. Now, you obviously influence now, it started with you, but you've influenced and you are influencing a lot of people of different ages and in different places. How do you do that? What is the secret sauce of successfully influencing the others?
Yeah, this is a great question. And for this question, I'm going to call on all of you. Yes, you right here today. Because I think one of the ways we invite and we build a movement is by calling on each other and making sure that we all feel invited to participate, because we all have to understand that we have a role to play. Raise your hand if you are someone who enjoys writing. Who here, do we have any writers in the room? All right. Do we have any public speakers in the room? Okay, what about teachers? Do we have any teachers in the room? Policymakers, consultants, entrepreneurs, activists. All right. So one of the key ways of influencing or building momentum is to highlight the many different ways that everyone can contribute to the movement, making it inviting, making it as a storytelling process so that people can feel connected. Because if we don't understand that our every second breath comes from the ocean, why would we protect it? If we don't feel connected, if we don't feel like we understand, if our values are not in the center, we will never be able to have a compass that leads us forward in the direction that prioritizes sustainability, compassion, and genuinely the world and future that we can be proud of. So I think, long story short, that would be my magic sauce on how to build a movement. What about you?
I love to travel, and when I'm traveling, I usually bring a group of friends. But the destination that I usually visit is completely different to what some normal people think. But I challenge you, if you have a chance, to travel in an area, I will ask question first. Who has ever been traveling to a village or an area that there is no electricity at all? Whoa, yeah, quite, well, 6, okay, fine. Is there any chances that you are stranded in an area where clean water supply is very difficult for you, so you cannot even take a bath? One person, thank you, but this is very interesting. Is there any area that you visited without any signal of cell phone? Wow, okay, well, that's a lot. So, well, I call empathy. Empathy is when we can put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So we can be in the community shoes, in the place where for us it's only maybe lifetime experience, only once in a while, but they have to face the reality without electricity, without clean water supply, sometimes very simple food every single day of their life. So I don't need you to answer, are you interesting or not, to have that experience, but please do. It is very interesting. It is very nice. After all, when we really take a deep breath, before we going to sleep, we just thinking how lucky we are that we are live in a situation that we don't have to face any difficulties. We don't have to face the bumpy road to go to some places that we are going to do something. We don't have to make, tears because we have to live with a flame. There is no proper modern energy. We don't have to walk hours and hours to fetch the clean water to fulfill our needs. It is easy to talk, but I'm sure it will really change our heart if we are dare enough to have a chance to visit those kind of area. And I wish you will have a chance one day. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Again, a very important message, I think, that comes from both your answers. I'm really struck how similar all these answers are, at least how I see them. Is look, we tend to glorify, hero entrepreneurs and the cult of individual all over the world, but we can have, 10 times the amount of great change makers around the world, and we still are not going to make it. I think what you say and what I see the messages from both of your answers is that the secret sauce is we all have to take it upon ourselves. And unless everyone becomes a change maker and an action implementer of the change that we need to have, this is where we start going into that right way at the right pace. Right? Individuals only are not going to deliver the change that we need on time. And another thing is the empathy that actually links to the next question that I wanted to ask you. And I think empathy is probably one of the answers to that question. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you think differently. The next question is, if we look at influencing people, and you work with people in so many different countries, at so many different ages, they have different values. Are there any values that you see universal that can be used to instill that change and to activate people to actually be change makers themselves around the world?
Well, thank you. It's not easy, but I think I'm trying to remember, and I'm trying to ask all of you to be a person who has a 5 level of empathy. Okay. First, as we call it, sympathy and consolation. When you see somebody died, you say, oh, condolences, you give your heartfelt, because of all the accident. That's very simple one. The second is pro-social. You cannot stand yourself to see somebody very old who's supposed to stay at home but still bringing something very hard because they want to earn something. And the third is reciprocity. If you want somebody, you don't want somebody to hurt you, you don't hurt people. This is very important, the third level. The fourth level, if you follow the third level, I think the whole globe will be living peacefully because you will not destroy the environment. Because you don't want the environment like flooding, earthquake, destroy your life. The fourth level of empathy is empowering the less privileges. The clear example is, if you visit a place that you saw so many kids cannot afford to go to school, you only say, oh, it's a pity, they should go to school. They have to increase their education level. But you only say that because your level of empathy is only first and second. But if you have the fourth empathy, by all means, you will do many things. You will fundraise, you will ask people to support you, and you send those kids going to school to get a proper education. Because your fourth level of empathy is you want to empower the less privileges. Last but not least, the number 5 level of empathy is democratization in all living aspect. Meaning that you are opening all access. Access to resources, access to financial, access to information. You will work very hard to get every human being has the same access. Not like nowadays. The resources only in a few hands of people. We understand that. 20%, Pareto syndrome, 20% of people could manage or occupy 80% of the whole resources. And only 20% resources are, being needed by the 80% of total population. Thank you.
All right, so to be respectful of the time, because the timer is telling me I have 40 seconds left, I will be brief. I think that we are living in a community and a society that has a value that should be shifting from fear to love. And I think that this is simply something that I see as a common DNA of the generation I'm a part of. We know we do not have the luxury of time to wait until we are older to start creating change. But we are looking to our leaders to lead from a place of love. And I think with 10 seconds left, I'll pass it back to our moderator, and thank you as well from my side.
Well, thank you very much. That was really excellent. So mindful of time, also be brief. So we've had so many different messages, but if you want to remember, just remember one. The change is in your hands, right? So doesn't matter how small the action is, that action counts, and we all have to be the change makers, and the change makers who are empathetic and leave fear and are led by love. So with that, I think this is a very good message that takes us to the next session, and with that message, we have to listen and look at what we have delivered this year at V20 in the Nature Task Force, and I will pass with that to our next facilitator, Dr. Shaiba Roy. Thank you very much. And thank you both, and thank you all. Terima
Thank
kasih.
you, Dr. Christoph. Wait, hold on, ladies. Fiery ladies, stay on your spot because we're going to take a picture with Dr. Christoph as well, the facilitator who is joining us online. Amazing talk, Bu Puni. I'm your
Amazing.
new fan. Melati, I want to meet your parents and be at your dinner table. Okay, big smile to the camera at the center. Representing two generations, but great ladies with
Thank
same
you so
energy.
much.
Thank you.
So please give a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Melati Waisen and
Ibu
Ibu
Tri
Tri Mumpuni.
Your energy radiates.
Keren
really.
banget Bu Puni.
Amazing.
Thank you, Dr. Christoph.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you, terima kasih.
So, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, go on to the next agenda. It's Nature Task Force panel discussion, where we will have deeper understanding of value in nature.
So please welcome our speakers and panelists who are here in person with us. Bapak Henry Thomas Simarmata, the V20 2022 Task Force Leader, Driya Karya Working Task Force or KERAT, a Penn Law Associated Program for International Law Indonesia.
And Ibu Mashail Al-Zaid, V20 2022 Delegate, Researcher in Big Data and AI, Saudi Arabia. And later on, we will continue the session of Nature Task Force panel discussion led by the next facilitator who joining us online, which is Dr. Shaibal Roy.
Dr. Shaibal Roy is the V20 co-founder, managing director and founder of Axia Origin, United Kingdom. Dr. Shaibal Roy is also the co-founder of the Values 20 group. He is a medical doctor from King's College London, a former expert member from Mackenzie Advanced Healthcare Analytics and Hospital Institute.
And along with our speakers, Bapak Dr. Niko Wanandi, PhD, the Research Associate at UNSW Australia, who is here with us in Bali.
And more speakers will be joining us online for this upcoming session. We will welcome as well Ibu Fabian Micho, the Director SDG Impact of UNDP Sustainable Finance Hub, who will join us from Australia.
And Bapak Aziz Arman, the Vice President Director and Group CEO of Indica Energy Indonesia.
So ladies and gentlemen, please join us giving the warmest, biggest welcome to our 3.2 session speakers, panelists, and facilitator of
Nature Task Force panel discussion.
Hello everyone. Determination, endurance, grit, commitment, creativity, these are some of the values that we heard from our amazing speakers, our early career and senior change makers previously. What an extraordinary experience it was to hear those stories. Now the V20 communique attempts to channel the inspiration and the commentary it channels these key topics into documentation and themes and policy recommendations, and that's what this session is going to be about. We are going to be addressing the nature chapter in the communique, and we are going to hear from authors and leaders from the task force and then open up to a panel. So to give us maximum time for discussion, we're going to go straight to Henry and Mashael to hear about the wonderful chapter, the inspirational chapter, and we're going to hear an introduction for a few minutes After that, we will hear from our distinguished speaker panel. So let me hand over to Henry and Michelle for your prepared remarks.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to start by saying that I'm proud and honored to be part of the Values 20 again this year, and specifically be part of the Nature Task Force, not only because nature is a dear topic to my heart, but because it is to every individual in this room and on the planet. I'm honored and thrilled to be presenting the communique this year. When I first read the communique, I noticed the diversity of topics, and this only shows how we are connected to our nature. And I like to categorize the communique to 3 different lenses: the social lens, the economical lens, and last, the technological lens. Energy has held a place since the very first leader-level meeting at the G20 as a whole. And despite all the literature, despite all the law enforcement with regards to the sustainability and protecting the environment, we still see practices that harms, individual practices that harms our nature. And this lens shed light on the role stories can play in changing the behavior, and not only that, but also the communal knowledge of indigenous communities and how it can induce the social change that we need for these communities and for all of us. And that's a very, very important tool that not only can influence the social change that we need, but it can also be incorporated in the policy making. So that's the first lens. The second lens, which is the economical lens, is definitely an important factor that we need to take into consideration, because we always hear the question, should we take care of the economy or the nature? And I believe that COVID-19 revealed a blind spot in our decision making, and it is interconnectedness with our life. We are interconnected with life on so many levels. However, currently the way we measure our economy, the way we measure our competitiveness on a country level is through GDP. However, GDP undervalues the nature externalities and the nature cost that the economical activities results from economical activities. So this lens promotes and encourages the use of natural stock and accounting for natural stock when measuring the economical competitiveness of any country. And speaking of economy, of course, one of the main players of any economy is the businesses. And therefore, businesses has to play a major role in this movement, this global movement to protect our nature. This lens shed light on what's known as the circular business model that promotes the using and leveraging the end use of appliances rather than consuming it and producing it for the ownership of these products. We need to move beyond the regular, simple GDP to measure our competitiveness. We need to account for natural stock, and we need a quality education that develops the sensitivity for our youth towards their action on the environment. And last but not least, and especially in this era, the technological era and technological advancement, AI has been, digitalization in general and AI specifically has been harnessed in so many aspects of our lives, from complex systems, from vehicles to our homes, like our assistants, like Alexa. However, what's also important to consider and take into account is the environmental harm that is caused by modeling data and deploying artificial intelligence models. So the question is, how much energy is fair when it comes to AI modeling? Who is accountable for the environmental damages that are caused by developing and deploying AI models? Is it the data center, the country that hosts the data center, or the researchers themselves? And lastly, do we have sufficient data, sufficient environmental data that can help us utilize and harness the power of AI to anticipate any changes in our environment, any crisis ahead of time? We developed a framework that incorporates 4 different factors: the social, economical, environmental, and cross-governmental factors, to ensure that we harness the power of AI, we maintain growth in our economies. Not only that, but also preserve our nature and our environment. Last but not least, I'm proud of the work of this group because it only resembles how nature is connected to us on many levels, and it's a call for us to commit on personal level, institutional level, and governmental level on these policies. And I'm proud to come from a country that is both demonstrated excellence in both economy and preserving our nature and our environment. I'll move the microphone now to you, Henry.
Thank you, Mashail. I have nothing but gratitude extending to all of writers of the chapters. We have 7 writers of the chapters. The big challenge on developing chapter is that we write more of the same this year. So I just a bit change the logic of how to develop ideas into the chapters. I take one example. Mashail is so committed to the work on the subject of AI, so the key of commitment is there. I found that all other writers already committed themselves for more than 4, 6 years, even more, 10 years, committed for the working on the value of the nature. So the key text of commitment that I do want to highlight, I do want to make it readable, make it visible to all the readers. But at the end of the day, as previous speakers of previous sessions explained, that the commitment to nature should be also in the level of collaborations of nations. So I also have to say to all of us, other than Mashail, we have 2 friends from India which wrote about circular economy, but also about the collaboration among nations. They write really well in a way that they challenge the governments to think more of how they can extend this nature to the next generation. So the common commitment that we want to instill to governments, well, they can say that they have many difficulties, but it should be the commitment of also the governments that nature should be extending to the next generations. So I'm really happy that you all will be receiving the communique and the full chapters which can highlight the commitment. Possibly you will find that the policy sense, policy-wise, is nothing new, but you can see, you can have a sense that the writers really push the idea to public, the idea to policymakers, but also the idea to young generations to take more of a part of the works, to contribute more, regardless of their sectors, their field. The last thing that I want to extend to you all is, thank you, Shai, for just to open the discussion for the sessions. And as you can see at the screen, that the points by points of ideas of the commitments presented there. We do hope that our friends from our colleagues of India will take another round of responsibility to make this more visible. So I will say to Bhuvan and Ruvak in our group, so this is your turn, and we will also still contribute to the work of Task Force Nature. So I will give it to you, Shai.
Thank you, Henry. I must say, your modesty is and humility is very moving. To suggest that, what did you say? Possibly you will find policy-wise there's nothing new. I would like to, on behalf of everyone in the room, refute that and say actually there's some stunning stuff in here. And what I'd like to do actually is use that as a link to now invite our distinguished panelists to comment. I'm going to ask Fabienne first to come in, and to our panelists, please take a few minutes to express your main reaction to the communique, your preferences for the topics you would like to introduce for our wider discussion. But if possible, if you could make specific reference to where in the paper you took most inspiration and can make the link. So Fabienne, may I invite you to take responsibility to kick off the panel, and then we'll hear from Aziz, and then we'll hear from Nico.
Thanks, Shai, and thank you everyone for being here. It's an honour and a pleasure to be here, and you know, I have to say that I drew a lot of inspiration, was deeply moved by many parts of the communique, and just, you know, continue to be so impressed by the work that the V20 is doing, and, you know, playing a huge service as we try and map our path through to building forward better. You know, I guess when I look at the communique, I'm coming from it from the perspective of my role with the UNDP, and obviously they're a really strong link with the Sustainable Development Goals, and what we need to do differently to start making some positive action towards achieving the SDGs, and in particular the core tenets that underpin the goals themselves. So interdependency, that recognition that, you know, our economic, social and environmental goals are deeply connected, and, you know, we're seeing that play out, you know, obviously at the moment, you know, very tangibly with the triple threats of climate change, the pandemic, and more recently the war in Ukraine, and just how impacted we all are by those events. And also the core tenet of leaving no one behind and reaching those that are furthest behind first. You know, that's really the rock and the central tenets we come back to all the time. So when I read the 5 chapters, there were some threads that really sort of flowed through all of those chapters to me in that, you know, from that perspective. The first was the need to take a holistic, ecocentric, regenerative and systematic approach to everything we're doing. I think that, you know, we're living at the moment a road of where we're on the road of good intentions, which is littered and paved with potholes of unintended consequences and suboptimal results. And a lot of that comes down to, I think, trying to look at things in isolation and not dealing with the deep interconnectedness across goals. The need to humanise and tell stories. You know, a lot of people don't connect to the science, don't connect to the theory, but what they connect to is how the stories make them feel, and that's just so powerful. And we've heard some of those earlier today, which is just amazing. To recognise the interconnectedness of all life on Earth, and that we're not above nature but part of nature, and I think that came through in chapter 3. And you know, I think that's a really interesting you know, observation, that in our so-called era of the Anthropocene, that somehow we seem to have tried to remove ourselves and elevate ourselves above nature, and actually we're part of nature. Appreciating and being open to a different way of perceiving the world, and our part in it, and that we once had that knowledge, but we've lost our way a bit, and we can learn it again by really tapping in and listening to some of our longest living cultures on Earth, which came through in Chapter 5. And that we increasingly have amazing tools at our disposal technology like big data and AI will help us build forward better. But again, coming back to that holistic issue, we need to do that in a way that is values-based and actually, deals with the environmental and social consequences of some of that technology. I think finally for me, the issue of values is just elemental. I think, we have to bring this back at the highest level to the universal values that guide all of our decision making at all levels, and really look at ways that we can, tap into, those values and agree those values to create a level playing field and to create the enabling environment to drive the behaviours that we need to see to drive the change that we need to make happen. Thanks, Shai.
Thank you, Fabian. That was a wonderful run through of some of the core highlights of the chapters, and I've made a few notes that I'll come back to when we open the discussion. Let's hear from Aziz. Aziz, the mic is yours. But you're on mute, Aziz. The classic challenge of all remote working that we all do. In fact, there's a really you do that. You got that before me.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone or every parties who make this V20 2022 summit happen. And thank you for having me on. For the communique, I would like to give my comments on one specific chapter. In this case, chapter 3, which is the value of the interconnectedness, of which this chapter highlights the need to move beyond GDP as a metric of growth and to start internalizing the costs associated with negative externalities. It also suggests mapping of overlaps between 3 international accords or convention agenda to ensure policy coherence at the global level. And the abstract of this chapter basically outlines the dichotomy of economic growth and climate protection. And we, as a producer, we think these two concepts are not mutually exclusive. In our operation, we strive for both, and I guess this is very relevant as the world slowly transitions into a more sustainable future. I think what this chapter also emphasizes the need to go beyond compliance in protecting the environment by switching to more sustainable energy in all our life. That's, I guess, my short comment on the chapter 3, which I would like to focus on at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. But before we go to Nico, I want to return to your comment on policy coherence. I think those two words going together in the context of this extraordinary meeting and what the communique attempts to do. Please can I invite you to offer a further comment? We'll get into more detail later, but you were very succinct, which I appreciate, but could you go a bit further on your vision for how that policy coherence at a global level can actually help us go beyond compliance? Because one of the risks, of course, is that we go policy heavy, we make it all very technocratic, but then we start to lose some of the essence of what Fabienne was discussing. So would you mind sharing a couple of thoughts on that policy coherence note that you shared?
Yeah, I believe this the sort of incentive on how to internalize the cost, the external resulted from the negative externalities are are needed to really accelerate the change, to ensure that the license is not just about compliance. The license would also require, in addition to the social license to operate our life, our operation, it also involves the nature license to operate. So those policy in terms of incentive and disincentive needs to happen in a global scale in order for us to ensure that whatever happen in one place in our world will have influence in other part of the world.
It's a fascinating point, beautifully framed, and this is one of those moments where you know that you could spend 40 minutes talking about it and throw the whole conference off its timing, so let's avoid that. But I will come back to the point. And Nico, thank you for being patient. It'll be fantastic to hear your framing remarks, and then let's get into discussion.
Thank you, Shai. Yes, again, congratulations, Marshall and Henry, for communicating the communique. And firstly, as a soil scientist, I can offer a bit of my perspectives. The way we work, the way humans work, normally we are thinking about our own survival, like through base of economy, of a linear base of a business model in the past. But among all other species, we are the only one that pays to be on Earth. So if we have to operate based on the economic model to strengthen the human communities, we also have to think about ensuring the circular economy has to take place, as well as the interconnectedness between the indigenous communities and also preservation of soil and culture, local culture. The way I see this as a soil scientist is that, for example, looking at the chapter 2, AI, always have a big interest on it. Since AI, especially with the quantum computing, hopefully it can even give nature some voice box. So all the data analyzed can actually show something that is easily understandable by all human, and therefore we can take care of nature and all its beings by having this hard data. I think from my perspective, I think in the past people always think the technology advancement will make human better, but from the standpoint of a soil perspective, it would be great if the technology advancement itself actually truly revolve fostering the environment itself. So we can slowly move. I think in the past, naively we're thinking about a Technozoic era, but if we switch gear a little bit more, it become an Ecozoic era. So all the technology advancements with all the calculated risk and also the compensation should be given mostly to foster the soil and foster the environment. For me, caring for the soil and the water, it's actually our true partner in providing a good livelihood. And despite having technological advancement, we also have to look at, again, through the indigenous communities, because they do possess local tradition or local technology. And this, in every country, every area, there would be uniqueness, differences, which if we can even harvest with a good AI system that is really human-friendly and environmentally friendly, and can have an overarching connection between the data, and also possibly as well connecting with the policy, and therefore we can generate a success-based policy, success-based story policy, and also generate maybe a business model that is going towards like an upward vortex. So circular economy, most people ask me, how would it going to have progression, towards time? I mean, if it's just gonna be running in a circle, but if we can combine, the growth as well as the circular movement, it become an upward vortex. So that's my point of view. And from the biological standpoint, if we can sense what nature gave out, what sort of signal it gave out on a regular basis, having translated help with the a good AI, it will definitely give people easier momentum and opportunity to understand, especially with the GUI, the graphical user interface, for example, that will help to translate for general population in an easy manner. Things like even a representative from GUI can be presented to younger kids, so the younger generation will have an earlier opportunity to have the mind connected with the restorative mindset, and therefore moving towards the restorative economy as well as the overarching policies. So that's my view, Shay, if I may return it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. In the time we have remaining, which thankfully is a good amount of time, I'd like for us to talk about circular economy, to talk about a couple of comments were about how GDP is ineffective. That also features as a measure of as a total measure of economic performance, and that's obviously featured in the chapter as well. So there are a couple of views on that. So we'll talk circular, we'll talk GDP, but there's something, Nico, in the language you were using about giving nature a voice. I personally found the connection between the idea that advanced technologies, AI, could be used to give nature a voice. I found that very inspiring. I found that to be very inviting discussions about how do you then convert that into values-based policy. So I'd like to ask Mashael to start with, can you give us, for the purpose of this discussion, can you give us a simple definition of AI? And can you respond to Nico's comment about giving nature, and let's widen it from nature. Let's think about biodiversity. Let's think about climate action. Let's think about the topics within nature that are top of our agendas at the moment. How could we use, what is AI, and how can we use advanced technologies to give that voice? And Nico, if you would like to respond to Mashael, I'd really like to hear your response.
Of course. I heard the first part of the question, which is what's the definition of AI? I think there is no one global definition for AI, but I like to define it as a system that is capable of mimicking the human brain, human maybe activities, and human intelligence. It has an advantage over the humans in terms of speed and accuracy. But I have to mention, since we are at the Values 20, that AI is good at amplifying both the good and bad, whether be it the speed of completing a task, or the bad as in reflecting the biases that we have as human beings. So that is my own definition of artificial intelligence. I didn't hear the second part of the question. If you could repeat the question.
Thank you for the very effective, simple, non-jargon definition. I think I appreciate it very much. Now let's reframe the question. So if we have the opportunity to use technologies, advanced technologies such as the ones you're mentioning, and we can write chapters about it in things like the V20 communique, but they have a risk of amplifying the bad, reflecting our biases. If we now go to Nico's comment about how we can give a voice to some of these ecological emergencies and challenges, what is the role of the V20? I guess what I'm attempting to do is offer a frame, and for us all to think, what's the role of values in all this? What's the role of values in trying to use advanced technologies to accelerate progress in some of these key issues? Fabian, you're nodding. Do you have a view? Would you like to take a shot?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Well, I think I think values are just absolutely fundamental. I think we often talk about, the benefits and the power of technology, and particularly, I'm quite involved in the impact investment space, the ability of technology to, create solutions. But on the flip side of that, there's the opportunity for technology to really, deepen the divide between, on an inequality basis in terms of, those that, that are part of that, positive story versus those that are left behind. So, I think that we're not well placed at the moment. Regulation and policy is usually a lagging tool that comes along after we start to experience, unintended consequences of innovation and change. And this is an area where I think where I think the consequences are really high, and we really need to think about it up front in terms of what are the values we want to guide the decision making as we move into these new spheres, both from the perspective of the consequences of some of the technology itself, from the perspective of what it means for the future of work and people that may be left behind, and how we're going to redistribute wealth that is unevenly earned. All of those things, I think we should be having that discussion now and laying down the ground rules so that we can actually move forward with confidence and drive the outcomes that we want, and not be mopping up the mess after the fact.
I'd like to add to the point,
Go ahead.
the fact that the framework that we have developed ensures both our capability and enable us to leverage the power of AI in predicting the climate, in predicting crisis, and finding patterns in the data. But we cannot do that without having sufficient data on governmental level about be it the climate or the soil. So we need sufficient data. We need the cooperation among the governments, among the ministers, to collect the data and make it available for analysis. I think that would be a very powerful enabler for us to predict and anticipate any changes in the future.
Thank you. And Nico, this started with your remarks. What's your reaction to the bills from Fabienne and Michelle?
Yeah, I found it's really hopeful. I think it's also a step has to be designed to be able to collect data as much as possible from intergovernment, and to have this based on the agreement, for that human can have a better understanding on how the nature actually behaves, not to dominate it, but to respect it. So if we can have this as a tool, especially with the quantum computing, which will give us a much faster rate of data analysis and neural network, I think that will be something that my personal view and dream, to be realized. So this is a great news.
I agree with you.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Let's switch to circular business models. There was a few discussions, a few reference points, but again, let's think about how circular business models are represented in the chapter, and then let's open up the discussion. Henry, Mashal, would either of you like to offer an introductory remark to how circular business models, circular economy is referenced in the chapter, and then this time, let's go to Aziz for your initial reaction. Let's talk about business models and the vital importance of being values driven and what that means for policy decision making.
You first and then me. Commenting on the body of chapters. Just to pick up which one you find it.
It's really hard to pick one chapter because I think all the chapters complement each other. I cannot even choose my own chapter, as I believe that each chapter has its own flavor, its own values. and we cannot empower one aspect and leave the others ignored. So I think what I'm gonna comment on is how I am proud of the output of this task force, and I look forward to seeing it implemented in real life.
Okay. I probably didn't frame the question very effectively. I apologise, Michelle. I think if what I'd like to do though is offer a remark on circular economy and circular business models and hear from our panelists. If the opportunity to use circular models is differentiated from the way we currently work, because we deliberately design business models and policies that take away the linearity of something being used once for economic gain, for example, in the examples in the chapter, in the production of domestic appliances, for example. And then you, instead of keeping it linear, you then return to source, you try to recycle, you try to regenerate. What does that mean practically? Because this term circular economy has been around for a while. It does invite ideas and feelings of optimism, because it seems to make sense. It reminds of the carbon cycle, the water cycle, and nitrogen cycle. There's something natural about circular. Even the logo for Utopia earlier looked like a circle cut out from the SDGs, which I found very inspiring. What for our panelists, what can we share with our distinguished delegates and guests about the importance of circular business models, circularity, in the way that we think about nature and these policy themes that we're attempting to discuss? Aziz, would you like to go first?
Just to take this up, can I do it, Shaheen?
Please,
yeah,
go
just,
ahead.
Please.
Yeah, just to respond to a vantage point of the chapters. So, as I understand that we did try to catch as many as newness in the context of value of nature, but at the same time we want to try to amplify. So the question is, circularity is really difficult to gauge. But we do try to project to that directions. And if we take this year of vantage of this year, so we found it three. We can call it commitment space. One is, of course, technology. We just discussed it. So more and more, it should be playing a bigger role in the context of nature. The second is what we call as communities, especially for Indonesia, is very important since they are the bearer, the bearer of the traditional knowledge, which in a way we yet to know, we yet to understand. I take two examples of this. One is the sea nomads of Indonesia, Bajo, the one who going around in the ocean, in the sea of Indonesia. They for generations they absorb knowledge of the oceans, and it relates with the challenge of the ocean as a source of tracking to carbon. The other is in the chapter also we did take the Dayak community, the various communities in Borneo, which they I think it relates really well to Nico's presentation, which really developed a context of soil and water as contributions to respond to climate change. So this is the second, we call it commitment space. And the third point is that the third commitment space is, of course, how policy supported by more and more groups, communities, and people, since the policy cannot represent themselves, they cannot find it true in itself, but they should explain to the one who has have a trust in the policy. So in these three points, I call it commitment space. I think it is safe to say that we can also develop a context of circularity. Thank you.
Thank you. That's one angle on circularity. Thank you, Henry. Henry, I also sense that your views on community obviously go much deeper than the summary level that you provided. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about your views that connect the ideas of community, your ideas of community with the group, with our audience today? Is there anything else you'd like to add? It just felt to me like you were introducing something that goes much deeper, obviously. Are there any other key messages about the role of community in nature that you would like to share now?
So just one or two chapters of Bhuvan and Dhruvan. They write really a kind of first of take before it translate to India as a G20 presidency. So I think I have a hope that these two chapters can play a bigger role in the next year V20. And I did talk with Dhruvan and Bhuvan. Please write something that you can carry in the G20 India presidency. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's change the focus. In the initial remarks from our panelists, we heard from Aziz. Aziz, you talked about moving beyond GDP and start internalizing the cost of sustainability. I think this is a really important topic that everyone on our panel will have developed views on. So Aziz, can I invite you please to elaborate on your views about moving beyond GDP? And Fabienne, when you see the moment, please will you take the mic from Aziz, and let's develop a discussion for our delegates about the importance of moving beyond GDP in the context of values for nature.
Yeah. Well, I guess the role of nature and social in our economic activities, which is represented by GDP, are need to be well thought in terms of the value of nature and the social. So this needs to be in a way, because GDP in a way GDP is a quantification of the economic activities, and if GDP would like to incorporate the value of nature and social, we have to have a measurement of how the economic activities affect the nature and the social life surrounding the activities. And so that's why what I mentioned earlier about this incentive to protect the nature must represent the true value of the nature, for example, or even the social. So those could serve as also as the licenses to operate, not only just the compliance or the government license to operate, but also the nature license to operate, as well as the social license to operate. Back to you.
Thank you. That's a great starting point. Fabienne, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think, my personal view is that GDP has probably always been an insufficient and deficient measure even of economic activity, because of the fact that oftentimes it's leaving out things from the calculation of that measure that actually do have economic consequences. And I think again in chapter 3, some of the costs of ignoring nature in decision making, were borne out very well in terms of not only their social and environmental costs, but also the economic costs. So we have some issues going on where, from a human perspective, and I always love the jelly bean experiment because I love sugar and jelly beans, but the experiment with kids where you give them 2 jelly beans and say that if they can wait 15 minutes they can have 10, and 9 out of 10 kids eat the 2 jelly beans. They can't wait 15 minutes. And I think that we've got an issue around short and long term perspectives that plays out in economic and financial decision making. and also a redistributive effect where we have people and organisations that make decisions to benefit their own short-term interests, where the costs and consequences of those decisions are diffused and borne by many or others in the system. I think that one of the things that is really interesting about the moment we find ourselves now is that we're starting to push up against our planetary and social system boundaries. And so the consequences of a lot of the decisions that we've been making in the past are starting to come home to roost. And I think that really plays into an opportunity to really drive home the importance of sustainability as a lever for value creation and business opportunity. In terms of how organisations start to think about this in the private sector. Again, from a policy perspective, we need a policy environment that is enabling and sending the right signals and incentives. But increasingly, I think the private sector is realising that these are things that they need to take into account, both from a risk management perspective, but also and being able to anticipate things, risks that are coming to fruition, but also importantly as a way to really be a first mover and identify and lean into these trends to create new business opportunities, to innovate, to pivot their businesses from where they are to where they need to go in the future. So I think that that's a really positive way that we can help to drive this discussion, because I agree that the focus on external reporting and compliance isn't sufficient. It drives a form over substance mindset. It focuses on the risk. It doesn't focus on the opportunity. And what we need is innovation and creativity. As Malati said in her comments, we really need that innovation and doing things differently in the future. And just on the issue of the circular business models, I think with a lot of these things, there's nothing is the answer. There's going to need to be lots of different things that are part of the answer. And I think that and it came through a little bit in the chapter, one of the other things we really need to deal with is the elephant in the room about consumerism and how products are being developed with planned obsolescence and just that turnover and constant need to have the next best the next new gadget and serial sort of short-term use of things that could last a lot longer, because even with circularity there's usually some leakage from that system that's still causing waste and harm. So I think that there needs to be a combined way of looking at that as we go forward.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And I was really happy to hear you refer back to Malati's presentation earlier, because as you were speaking against when you were talking about how compliance focuses on risks, not opportunities, it was reminding me that when we were hearing about the courageous story of how a 10 and 12-year-old started, this would be without the limitations of thinking about compliance. And if Malati was on the stage now, I'd certainly invite a comment to hear about a perspective on that. Now we have a few minutes left, and thank you for giving such rich answers. But I would also like to present the opportunity to each of you to offer your final thoughts and remarks, to summarise your position or emphasise a key point for the benefit of our delegates and those who will watch this after the event. Please take a minute or two if you would like to share your views. But Henry, may I insist that you go last, because as the task force leader, I think it's extremely fitting that you would conclude the session. Could I ask Nico, would you like to go first? Your concluding remarks, wisdom to share with the group, and then let's go to Mashaya, and then we'll go to Aziz, then Fabienne, and then.
Yep. Yes, thank you. I actually like to present the quote in the communique from Dr. Daisaku Ikeda. He says, all living things, flowers, birds, the sun, the soil support one another in a beautiful symphony of life. Human life is a part of that chain. If at any point of a link were missing from this chain, none of us would be alive today. That's my remarks. Thank you.
Beautifully put, and thank you for selecting that quote. Mashal?
I just want to mention that despite the different backgrounds that we come from, different religions, different maybe majors and interests, there are topics that unite us like nature, and I believe that a communique like this one is a great starting point for us to speed up this progress and this movement toward a more sustainable life on Earth.
Please.
I am looking forward to India V20 in the India G20 presidency, and with the hope that these chapters can contribute more as it compares this year, but more in the context of how it will affect outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Aziz, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think with the change, with the differences which are taking places in our life these days, nature should serve as the unifying factor. Nature has to serve as the mainstream for all of us.
Thank you. Fabienne?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, gratitude for the gift of life that this amazing, beautiful, big blue planet affords all of us, and repaying that gratitude with, you know, with stewardship for future generations to also enjoy and hopefully leave this planet a little bit better than we find it. The quote I'd like to choose from chapter 3, actually I was going to choose the one earlier, but a close second, which I think is also a nice note to finish on, is, you know, the time has come for a systemic transition from an anthropocentric to an ecocentric worldview, integrating a wide spectrum of values ranging from living from, with, in, and even as nature. And I think that's that for me, I think really resonated very loudly.
Thank you. Thank you. I've had the great honour, really, of being involved in the V20 for a couple of years, and I have every expectation that the recording and transcript of this discussion will age well. What I really mean is that I hope that others discovering this after today will enjoy listening to your remarks relative to reading the chapter, and there's a lot that we've covered. Of course, the theme for V20 this year is values at the centre, and we've concluded our discussion with remarks such as there are topics that unite us, like nature, that the communique is a way to speed up progress to more sustainable life on Earth, that nature provides the unifying factor with all the changes in our life, and the comments of stewardship for future generations. For me, they all represent how values are indeed at the centre. And we didn't spend much time speaking and sharing with the group comments about how we each see how you see values in your day-to-day work. But clearly, values have been prominent in the way we've all expressed our reaction to the chapter. So I would like to offer sincere and extreme congratulations to the multiple authors of the chapter, represented of course by Henry Mashal on the stage. Thank you. I can imagine the work required to get it done. It's one of those situations where most of us only see a tiny fraction of the work that was actually done. So on behalf of all of us, for the extraordinary accomplishment that you've achieved as a team with your co-authors, thank you so much. And we'll conclude our panel discussion there. Thank you again.
Thank you, Shai. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shai.
Okay. All right, now it's time for another photo opportunity. So for our speakers who are joining us online, please stay with us. And then we'll take a picture looking at the center of the room. There's our photographer. Big
On
smile,
3,
everyone.
2, 1. Nice. One more time. 3, 2, 1.
All good? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shaibal Roy, Ibu Fabian, Bapak Aziz Arman, Dr. Niko Wanadi, and also Bapak Henry Thomas Sinamarat Mata, and Ibu Mashal Al-Zaid.
Yes.
Really fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. You may please return to your seats. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with the end of this session, we have come almost to the end of day one. Almost. We're going to have more fun in a little while. Yeah. So as we have discussed lots about values at the center and nature and experience, values mini workshops as well. Now, before closing day one, maybe our outtakes from this day one is, if we need to summarize, we all agree that V20 is the heart of G20, isn't it? Yep. Indeed. G20 without V20 is like a body without a heart. I love that sentence so much. And I'm sure everyone here agrees that we are agent of change, right? Start from ourselves, create a community, so everything we do here as a group is not just talk, but we must do the walk as well.
Exactly. And I think value is really the driving force of all transformation. Value creates culture, value creates civilization. And the beautiful things about value, it all comes from the very foundational concept of love. So it's a beautiful concept. It's a beautiful thing to be here to talk about this, to talk about love, to celebrate love. And I'm really looking forward for day 2 tomorrow to talk more about this.
Great, Kinan. Before we have fun with... Bapak-bapak, sorry. Aku kok jadi munggungin. Maaf ya, Pak. Aku baru sadar. Maaf ya, Pak. Sebentar ya, Pak. Before we have fun with the performers, please allow us to say thank you one more time. Yes, for the sponsors and partners of the event. But before that, we have the QR code, which is the survey for the session. Please scan the QR code and fill in the survey form. Thank you for your participation. And now please allow us to thank our partners and sponsors. The Gotong Royong partners, we would like to thank Indica Energy,
Bank Mandiri,
Mind ID,
Paragon Technology and Innovation,
Holding Al-Turki Holdings,
BRI Bank Rakyat Indonesia,
Forum Human Capital Indonesia,
Kalbe Pharma,
Hydrokoko, Fitbar, Saka Pharma, Klik Dokter, Patra Jasa,
BP Jam Sostek,
Taspen, Ganara Art,
Garuda Indonesia,
Kementerian Pendidikan Riset Kebudayaan dan Teknologi,
Alam Sutra, Kereta Api Indonesia, dan Kala Group.
Thank you, our Gotong Royong partners, and also our organizing partners. They are Daya 5, Daya Dimensi Indonesia, Bapenas, Stoik Trisula, and Pantare Communications.
And our community partners, Pemimpin.id, Lead the Fest 2022, Ecosystem, Jumbo.
Also, Saya Perempuan Anti Korupsi, and last but not least, we want to thank Arwat Group,
Evolutionary Future Lab, the Leadership Tree, Axia, Origin as our knowledge partners. Thank you.
Can we give them the biggest round of applause? Thank you. And thank you for your presence here today, of course, our beloved audience of the 2022 Summit, for your energy, your participation on day one of the V20 Summit. And we still have day 2 tomorrow with more enlightened sessions, interactive workshops, and activities. And tomorrow, the program will start at 8:30 a.m.
It's going to be an early morning, yeah?
Yeah, don't party tonight. Party tomorrow night, okay?
And there will be more program that you
Go
can
to bed
follow,
early. Yes.
such as in EWS Sustainability Venue Tour that starts from 11:50 to 3:10 p.m. The mini workshop program started from 12 o'clock and 3 p.m. located at the heart of school, such as gamelan lesson and guided meditation session at music room, Balinese dance lesson at Wantilan, recycling and composting workshop at grade 3 room, and Janara art mini workshop at grade 1 room.
Nice, exciting program for tomorrow. And please don't forget to bring back your poncho for tomorrow in case another rain shower, light one. So, as for today, we still have another performance, which we hope that you will all join this fun,
Yes.
which is Joget dance performance, which will be followed by local band performance. Can we give the biggest round of applause for our Joget dance performance?
Recording stop.